Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, our whole mission here is to take things that on the surface seem almost superficial, maybe even a little chaotic, and just show you the hidden complexity underneath.
It's all about giving you that shortcut, that aha moment.
Exactly. And today we are diving into a cultural artifact that I think for a lot of people is probably the very definition of superficial chaos.
I think you're right. We're talking about new metal.
We are. And when we got this stack of sources, I mean, we're talking game theory, urban criticalism, digital anthropology, all focused on one single track by Limp Bizkit. I just knew this was going to be an unforgettable deep dive.
It had to be. The track, of course, is their massive, polarizing 2000 anthem,
Yeah.
My Generation.
And I think we have to ask you to just, for a moment, forget everything you think you know. Forget the red baseball caps. Forget the Woodstock 99 headlines.
Because we're going to take the song apart, piece by piece, and show that it's actually this incredibly dense cultural text.
The sources call it a seismographic capture. I love that phrase. A perfect capture of the anxiety of the year 2000.
It really is. I mean, think about that specific moment in time. You've got the Y2K bug creating this low-level hum of tech anxiety.
The dot-com bubble is at its absolute peak,
Yeah.
promising this insane, impossible future.
And it's all happening in this very unique pre-9/11 cultural space where everything felt aggressive, but also weirdly naive at the same time.
So this song isn't just noise. The sources argue it's a sonic document of a demographic changing of the guard.
And at the center of it all is Fred Durst, who very, very deliberately positioned himself as this anti-hero.
For what he called a generation strange, right?
Exactly. A generation that felt completely misunderstood and, frankly, vilified by the mainstream.
So our mission today is to show you how the song uses visceral, aggressive language and these really potent, almost catastrophic metaphors.
Which we're going to unpack academically.
To explore the collapse of traditional authority and, maybe most importantly, to issue this desperate, conditional demand for recognition.
So we're peeling back the layers. The work is My Generation, from the album Chocolate Starfish and the Hot Dog Flavored Water.
And even that title, I mean, it tells you everything. It's blending the completely crass with something almost cosmic.
That's the whole aesthetic, the absurdity mixed with aggression. And we're going to start with the song's very first and maybe most important geographical anchor.
Let's do it. We've identified 4 key lyrical phrases that just unlock this entire text. And the first one is a line that I think most people, myself included, probably just dismissed as filler.
Just some stage banter.
Exactly. The line is, John Otto, take him to the Matthews Bridge.
So why do all these sources insist that this seemingly throwaway line is actually the song's anchor?
Well, because to understand it, you have to apply this really niche but powerful analytical lens. The sources call it Psychogeographia Acoustica Urbana.
Okay, let's break that down. Urban sound mapping. Basically, yeah, it's not just analyzing sound. It's analyzing how specific real-world physical structures, bridges, highways, buildings, how they act as deep psychological triggers for a population.
So it's where the physical world literally slams into the musical world.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And if you're going to apply that lens, you have to treat the location itself as a primary source. The Matthews Bridge, it's not a fictional place.
It's real.
It's very real. It's this huge, imposing piece of infrastructure in Jacksonville, Florida.
Which is the band's hometown.
Their origin point.
Yeah.
And that local specificity is the first layer here. But it's more than just a bridge. In the local consciousness of Jacksonville, it carries this very specific, very dark psychological weight.
What kind of weight are we talking about?
Well, it's known locally for being dangerous. It's unnervingly high. And tragically, the sources all confirm its reputation as a place that is frequently associated with suicides.
Wow.
So it's not a place of comfort. It's not a destination. It's a place of tension, of risk, of final decisions.
So when Durst gives that command to the drummer, he's doing more than just cueing the band.
He is. The sources argue he's achieving 3 things at once. First, yes, it's a musical directive. Take us to the bridge, the transitional section of the song. Standard stuff.
Okay, that's the surface level.
The second thing is, he's psychologically transporting the listener, even if you don't know the geography, to what academics call a liminal space.
A space that's in between.
Exactly. A bridge is, by definition, suspended. It's neither land nor water. It's not the start of a journey or the end. It's this moment of pure, anxious suspension over an abyss, in this case, the St. John's River.
That feeling of being in transition without any security, that perfectly captures that generational anxiety, doesn't it?
It's the physical embodiment of it. And then there's the third action, which is the claim of identity.
How so?
By naming the specific, notorious local landmark, he's resisting that pressure for rock bands to be generic, to be placeless. He's yelling, "We are from Jacksonville," and our specific tension, our specific anxiety is defined by this structure.
It's a kind of defiance through being hyper-local.
It is. Now let's talk about what happens right after that line, the music that follows.
Right, this huge, heavy, almost industrial-sounding riff kicks in.
And if we're sticking with this urban sound mapping lens, that's not just random heavy noise. The sources define that riff as, and I'm quoting here, sonorizing the feeling of being suspended over the abyss.
Sonorizing the feeling.
Think about the sounds of steel, of concrete. They're heavy, cold, rigid. The music is using that sonic language to convey structural stress. It's the sound of a system under too much pressure.
The sound of a psyche about to break.
Just like the bridge itself. You're meant to feel the weight of it all. Which brings us to the second framework for this section, because if the pressure is that intense, there has to be a release.
Right, there has to be a way to deal with it.
And that's where we shift lenses to what the sources call Ingeniería de la Catharsis Cinética.
Kinetic catharsis engineering. So the engineering of a physical release.
Exactly. We're moving from the bridge as a metaphor for the mind to the bridge as a location for a physical event. That command, "Take him to." It's so aggressive, it breaks the fourth wall.
Right. He's not just singing to the audience anymore, he's commanding them.
He's directing their energy.
Yeah.
And in this framework, the idea of the bridge stops being a physical place, and it becomes what's known as a temporary autonomous zone, or a TAZ.
A TAZ. I've heard that term. It's a space where the normal rules are suspended, right?
For a short period of time, for a collective action, that dangerous liminal space, the bridge, is transformed into a psychological pressure valve. All that tension that's been building up is finally given an outlet.
And that outlet is the mosh pit.
That outlet is the mosh pit. The music is literally designed to mimic the structural vibration of a real bridge under a dangerous amount of weight. The generation is the bridge, holding up all this social critique, all this pressure, and it's about to collapse.
But instead of a psychological collapse,
It explodes in a release of kinetic energy. The mosh pit isn't just chaotic dancing. The sources argue it's the required biomechanical reaction to an intolerable level of systemic stress.
it's a necessary physical failure that prevents a mental one?
It is the structure failing, but in a controlled, rhythmic, collective way. You're channeling the energy of collapse into something cathartic. So the bridge isn't just a setting. It's a living metaphor for the generation's mental state, and it all culminates in this necessary violent release.
That completely reframes it. We've gone from a simple shout-out to this complex geographical and psychological release mechanism. Okay, let's move from the physical infrastructure of Florida to the digital infrastructure of the year 2000.
This is where it gets really interesting, I think.
It's the line, "We downloaded the shockwave for all the ladies in the cave." This is just such a perfect collision of the ancient and the, at the time, hyper-modern.
It is the perfect entry point for the next framework, which the sources call Paleo-Cybernetica Sociologica.
Okay, socio-cybernetics.
Or, to put it more simply, the study of the early digital human. And the sources have this incredible phrase for this period. They call it the era of the Neanderthals with broadband.
Neanderthals with broadband, that's perfect. It just captures that sense of a huge technological leap happening way faster than our social or emotional maturity could keep up with.
100%. This was the first generation to really get online, en masse, usually stuck in their parents' basement, suddenly navigating this vast new world while still dealing with the most ancient, primal human urges.
And we can actually use the lyric to carbon date the song, can't we? What exactly was Macromedia Shockwave?
So for anyone who didn't live through the dial-up era, Shockwave was everything. It was the plug-in. If you wanted to see an animation, play a crude online game, see any kind of multimedia content on the web or in 1999, 2000.
You had to download the Shockwave player.
You had to. It was the absolute essential digital key to the cool parts of the internet. Mentioning it places the song at that precise historical inflection point.
So the download itself is a kind of initiation right into this new digital world.
It is. But here's the paleo-cybernetic paradox. They're using this advanced, almost magical technology, the download, to satisfy the most basic, primal impulses, to groove on, which implies aggression, dancing, mating rituals. The tech is new, but the goal is ancient.
Which brings us to the cave. Advanced software serving primal needs in this archaic location. The sources seem to have two main theories on what the cave means here.
They do. The first one is incredibly philosophical. It draws a direct line to Plato's allegory of the cavern.
Plato's cave, so the idea that we're all just watching shadows on a wall.
Exactly. In that reading, the cave is the bedroom. It's the basement. The generation is sitting there, chained in front of these glowing screens, and all they're seeing are projected shadows-mediated experiences, JPEGs, early video clips, instead of direct, authentic reality.
That's a really deep critique of the internet's early promise, isn't it? That instead of liberation, it brought this new kind of confinement.
Right. Psychological confinement, yeah. Now, you contrast that with the second interpretation, which is much more visceral.
Okay.
The sources also connect the cave to the Playboy Mansion's famous grotto.
Ah, okay. The literal cave-like pool structure known for its hedonistic atmosphere.
Right. So on one hand, you have this deep philosophical critique. On the other, you have this very contemporary, very crass cultural reference that fuses this raw, primitive sexuality with the ease of digital delivery.
So either way, the core idea is that experience is no longer sought out in the real world.
It's downloaded.
Yeah.
You don't have to go out and hunt or explore or interact in the analog sense. The experience, whether it's social connection or sexual titillation, is mediated, filtered, and available on demand.
And that makes the word shockwave dual-layered. It's the name of the software, but it's also the cultural shockwave of this new reality arriving all at once.
That's the key. It permanently altered how these ancient primitive urges were being expressed. And the music itself mirrors this. The track is built on this foundation of heavy, digitally processed guitar distortion. But what's driving it? A low, visceral, fundamentally primitive hip-hop groove. The music itself is a fusion of advanced digital tools and a primal physical impulse. It's the perfect soundtrack for the Neanderthal with broadband.
Okay, so we've covered the anxiety of the physical environment with the bridge and the confusion of the new digital environment. Now the song it zooms out, the scale becomes global.
It becomes systemic. And the line that does it is, "Captain's drunk, your world is titanic, floating on the funk."
We're moving from personal angst to a full-blown indictment of global collapse.
This is where we have to bring in the framework of dynamica de crisis y hedonismo absurdo.
Crisis dynamics and absurd hedonism.
A big term, but it's basically a systemic critique of leadership failure, as seen through the lens of music. First, we have to identify the drunken captain.
Who is it?
The sources are unanimous on this. The captain is the previous generation, it's the boomers, it's the establishment, it's anyone holding traditional authority.
And to call them drunk that's a heavy charge. It's not just incompetence.
It's criminal negligence. The youth are explicitly stating that their leaders, government, corporations, even their own parents, are not just making mistakes, they are actively derelict in their duty while steering the ship of society.
Which, of course, completely justifies the youth's own nihilism, right? If the people in charge are that irresponsible, why on earth would you buy into their system?
It preemptively defends the apathy we're going to discuss next. But first, the vessel itself, the Titanic. The sources are very clear that this isn't just any sinking ship, it's a universal symbol.
The symbol of arrogance.
Of modern Western civilization crashing into the iceberg of its own arrogance, the Titanic was unsinkable. The establishment was so confident in its wealth, its technology, its own rightness, that it believed it was immune to disaster.
And this generation is watching this supposedly unsinkable system head directly for the iceberg.
And crucially, they see themselves as the third-class passengers. They're not the ones on the top deck with access to the lifeboats. They're trapped below, subject to the failures of the elites steering the ship.
That sets up a perfect scenario for a kind of fatalistic rebellion. If the crash is inevitable and you're trapped, what do? The song says you don't panic.
No, the response is groove. This is where absurd hedonism comes in. The generational response to the shipwreck is not political action. It's not trying to fix the ship. It's rhythmic adaptation.
Floating on the funk. I've always heard that as just, we like funk music, but you're saying it's a structural survival strategy.
Think about the physics of it. The Titanic is rigid, heavy, hierarchical steel. It sinks. What is funk music? It's all about the bass line. It's elastic, it's fluid, it's about movement and improvisation. It is the sonic opposite of rigidity.
So the rigid, arrogant world, the metal, sinks under its own weight?
But those who can adapt, who can flow, who can float on that elastic rhythmic bass, They survive. It is a declaration of what the sources call festive nihilism.
Festive nihilism.
If we can't save the ship, the most defiant act imaginable is to dance on the wreckage. It's why nu metal had to have that hip-hop and funk foundation. That groove provides the sonic and philosophical buoyancy needed to survive the sinking of the metal structure around it.
So the choice to float is an active rejection of the old sinking rules.
Wow. Okay, that elevates it from a party lyric to a full-blown sociological statement.
Adapt or sink.
Which brings us to the song's absolute core. The most confrontational line, the one that's so often dismissed as just teenage vulgarity, but it holds everything together.
The mission statement.
We won't ever give a fuck until you give a fuck about me and my generation.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't just angst anymore. This is a negotiation.
This is where we bring in the big guns. The frameworks of negotiation, transaccional, del conocimiento, transactional negotiation of recognition. And to understand it, you have to use concepts from game theory.
Game theory, okay.
The sources stress that the grammar here is everything. It's not a statement, it's a conditional clause.
Yeah.
We won't until you.
That structure is the key. It is. Because it reveals a very sophisticated and rational strategy from game theory known as tit for tat. Reciprocity.
Tit for tat. Can you give us a quick, simple analogy for that?
Sure, it's the simplest and often most effective strategy. My first move is to cooperate. After that, I just mirror your last move. If you cooperate with me, I'll keep cooperating. If you defect, if you betray me, I will immediately defect on the next turn.
So their apathy, they're not giving a fuck, isn't their starting position.
It's a reaction. That's the core insight here. This isn't pure nihilism. The sources call it conditional nihilism.
Mm-hmm.
Economically speaking, it's a defense mechanism. They are withdrawing their emotional and social investment from the system.
Because they perceive that the system has already withdrawn its investment in them.
Society defected first. With the drunken captain, the sinking ship, the lack of opportunity.
Right.
Their refusal to care is just a direct, proportionate, rational retaliation. Tit or tat.
Which makes the aggression seem less chaotic and more calculated.
It's a strategy. But this leads us to the most vulnerable part of the entire song. The part that all the aggression is built to protect.
That second half of the line.
Until you give a fuck about me.
The sources say this is the most fragile, exposed lyric in the whole nu metal genre. All the loudness, all the distortion, the anger. It is paradoxically a desperate plea for validation.
It's a cry to be seen.
It reframes everything. The rage isn't the goal. It's the tool they're using to get attention. According to their own tit-for-tat strategy, if society were to suddenly turn around and show genuine care and investment,
the apathy would immediately stop. They would re-engage.
he would cooperate again. And this is where you can apply the philosophy of the social contract, Rousseau, Kant. The basic idea is that citizens agree to certain obligations.
Obeying laws, participating in society.
In exchange for societal benefits. Protection, opportunity, respect. And what the song argues so powerfully is that the establishment unilaterally broke that contract first.
And if one side breaks the contract, the other side is freed from their obligations. The youth are saying, you broke the deal, so we are no longer morally obligated to care about your rules or your norms. It is a sophisticated socioeconomic ultimatum delivered through the loudest possible medium.
So we've established the song as this complex, strategic critique. Now let's talk about how the band deliberately places itself within a larger history. They're not pretending this rebellion came from nowhere.
No, they're consciously building what the sources call a postmodern collage. They are anchoring their very specific Y2K anxiety in a much broader historical and literary lineage of dissent.
And the most obvious one, the one you can't miss, is the musical reference.
It's that intentional stutter. My generation.
That's a direct quote.
It's an unmistakable, explicit reference to The Who's 1965 anthem, My Generation. By adopting that specific phonetic signature, Limp Bizkit is doing something really bold. They are inserting themselves into the historical timeline of youth rebellion.
They're claiming their heritage.
They're essentially saying the mods in the 60s were reacting to post-war Britain. We are their descendants, and we are reacting to the failed promises of the digital millennium. It's the same fight, different chapter.
But the meaning changes, doesn't it? The famous line from The Who was, "Hope I die before I get old."
And that's the crucial update. The Who's rebellion was rooted in a kind of existential dread, a fear of what the future held. Limp Bizkit's version is more immediate, more transactional. It's not about dying young. It's about demanding recognition right now, before the whole ship goes down. They're using the history of rebellion to add weight to their immediate demands.
And they don't just stop with music history. They pull from literature, too.
A huge literary reference, the line. And maybe I'm the one who flew over the cuckoo's
A
nest.
direct nod to Ken Kesey's novel, and of course the Jack Nicholson film. The rebel Randall McMurphy fighting against the oppressive Nurse Ratched.
Right. And if you apply a psychological positioning framework here, when the narrator identifies with McMurphy, he is making an incredibly radical claim.
What's the claim?
He's saying that all of this behavior that you see as crazy, the aggression, the apathy, the loud music, is actually a sane, rational, and functional response to a sick and repressive system.
So, the new metal kids aren't the crazy ones. Society is the asylum.
That is the ultimate inversion of authority. The aggression is just a symptom of their sanity in a world gone mad. The red baseball cap isn't just a fashion choice. It's a refusal to wear the institutional uniform of the hospital ward.
It's a challenge to who even gets to define what sane is, which ties back to the album title, doesn't it? Chocolate Starfish and the hot dog flavored water. It's so absurd.
It's another way of saying, your reality is so fundamentally absurd, our response has to be equally absurd and unpalatable to you. It's institutional critique through aesthetic defiance.
Okay, there's one more reference to isolation. Sun don't even shine through our window pane. On the surface, it's just gloomy. But what does a sociological reading tell us?
Well, it's not just about a dark bedroom. It has two really significant interpretations. The first is economic. The sun is opportunity, it's social mobility, it's hope. And the perception is that the light of economic hope is literally being blocked from reaching them.
It's a visual metaphor for that broken social contract.
Precisely. And the second interpretation is about that suburban and urban isolation that defined the early internet age. The youth are literally trapped in these dark, PC-lit rooms, the modern cave we talked about earlier. Their main window to the world is a screen cutting them off from the actual sun, from organic community.
So in just a handful of lines, they've layered in a claim to the heritage of The Who, a psychological defense via Ken Kesey, and a sociological critique of economic isolation. It's an incredibly dense collage of meaning.
All camouflaged under layers of distortion and aggression. It's a manifesto.
Let's try to bring this all together then.
I think the biggest single takeaway from this deep dive is that the aggression, the distortion, all the abrasive parts of nu metal, they weren't the actual message. The sources argue they functioned as a kind of defensive wall.
The wall built to protect something.
To protect a much more fundamental and honestly a deeply vulnerable core. That desperate, transactional, almost childlike desire for recognition, for care, for investment from a society they felt had completely abandoned them.
The yelling is because they want to be heard, not because they enjoy the silence. The rage is a tool to demand acknowledgement. So when you look at it through these academic frameworks, the supposed simplicity just melts away.
My generation really did capture, with almost perfect fidelity, the specific anxiety of that millennium moment. It's the document of a generation realizing the promises of the drunken captain were hollow.
So they retreated into these adaptive survival strategies, finding refuge in new technology like shockwave, and finding refuge in a visceral fluid rhythm, the funk, that could help them float.
So what does this mean for you, the listener, today?
Yeah.
My generation is this incredible testimony to the friction between the analog and digital worlds. It wasn't a celebration of stupidity, like so many critics claimed.
No, it was the use of aggression and simplicity as tactical weapons against a world they saw as incompetent and terminal. It's a case study in how a marginalized group negotiates for its own survival.
It really was the manifesto for that millennial and zennial cohort, facing what they saw as the failures of their parents' generation. And we've seen how they use history, technology, and literature to build their case.
Which, after this whole deep dive, raises one final, crucial question that builds on everything we've talked about today.
We've established the strategic density behind their use of the Matthews Bridge, of shockwave, of the tit-for-tat contract, and that begs this final thought for you to take away.
Do the current generations, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, do they have an equivalent anthem? A song that is just as dense, just as multi-layered, that uses their unique technology?
Think about TikTok, generative AI, the crypto economy.
And their unique historical references to express their discontent in the same strategic way.
The mosh pit was a biomechanical response to a crisis in the year 2000. We'd encourage you to take these same frameworks we use today, urban sound mapping, socio-cybernetics, crisis dynamics, and apply them to the cultural artifacts you see around you now. See if they hold that same strategic weight.
That's the challenge we leave you with. Thank you so much for sharing your sources and for joining us on this pretty wild journey into the hidden depths of nu metal.
Thank you for joining the deep dive.
We'll catch you on the next one.